Hey guys, this will be video 5 for the how to restore a vintage Gibson Les Paul. This is a 71 Goldtop, and I've covered quite a bit of information related to this guitar in the first 4 videos, so if you're just tripping up on this video, you'll need to go to those 4 to see where we started and where we are at the moment and the direction we're going with this one. So the neck is completely fit, perfectly machined. Everything's on center line. The trapezoidal path, not only is the center line true related to the bridge, but just everything about even the string path, PATH, once the string path travels from the middle of the high E saddle and the low E saddle, everything's nice and true, perfectly in line, and it'll be nice and consistent. So turned out really well. I wish I could go into the details about how the tenon is offset a little bit, but this is about the 7th time I've done this video, and it's overwhelming to try to explain it and keep it simple. So just know that sometimes you're working from a true center line and sometimes you're working from a very slightly offset center line. So anyway, and it turned out, so far it turned out really well. I've got I was able to use the Stuart McDonald template to do all the taper work based on the fact that the client for this guitar wanted to assure that we ended up with a wider nut, more historically accurate, like 1 and 23/32 if possible, at a minimum 1 and 11/16. And I could actually take this one over 1 and 23/32 if Chip wanted like a 1 3/4 inch nut, definitely could be done. But that would be the threshold. But right now I've got this machine for a 1 and 23/32, and if that's too wide, then you can always go down a little bit. But nonetheless, that's how you use your double-sided tape or either your masking tape and I call it jet glue, but it's the CA glue, medium strength. Always use the medium strength when you're doing this. And then I remember the first time I saw a guy showing how you can do that. He was showing how you do it to do fretboard work, and I remember thinking, there's no way that's going to be strong enough. Man, his fretboard's going to come loose and it's going to blow across the shop. But sure enough, man, that's the most brilliant thing I ever learned. And I wish I'd have gotten the guy's name, but you could tell how confident he was when he was explaining it, that it was going to work properly. So it does, and it doesn't take much. 1 strip there, 1 in the middle, 1 out there. But I got 3 drops here, 2 drops here, and 3 drops there. And then that way when I'm putting this down, see, you have a scored center line on the back of this little jig so that you can align that center line with your truss rod channel and then carry it all the way up here and align it with the truss rod channel up there. And then that guarantees that once you machine this neck per this tenon, then you did not risk getting the nut high to the bass side or low to the treble side or anything like that. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it just guarantees that it keeps you true. Okay, so with that said, let me check the time. 3 minutes. Yeah, I'll leave that on there for a moment, and then we'll talk about the fitment later on. But I definitely will be removing this lower from that so I can show you the fitment. The fitment is basically 100% finished, and then then so that's all finished and fit. But I want to talk about some of these center lines just a little bit. When you're working from a historical, with a vintage guitar, you're working from basically the center of these 2 studs, because if you made a mistake and you got your neck off, and if you start relocating things down here, man, you're changing everything. And let's not talk about bad things. Let's make certain that trapezoidal path of this fretboard, once it goes on here, is not only true with the lower, but it's also true with the actual guitar as well. And you might think, well, that's really simple. You're just working off a center line. Yeah, for the most part, and I'll just say, yeah, you're right. I agree with you. But because there's so many variables that can go on there with an offset tenon and stuff like that, it can really throw you where you've just got to be aware of it. But for the most part, I knew that these 2 stud locations right here defined a center line here which defined a center line for the bridge pickup, and it carries on to the neck pickup, down the fretboard, and all that jazz. And then and not only does it affect the center line, but it starts affecting the fitment. Well, it affects directly the fitment of sides. I think I was calling it one, two, three. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It starts defining the fitment of sides 4, 5, and 6. This location here, that location, and that location. So what's going on is you're just making certain that as the tenon is being fitted to the guitar, that if you have a gap right here, or if you have a gap right here, or maybe you can see it's making too much contact right here on the bottom, but then there's a little bit of a gap right here. Well, then you start doing just a little bit of fitment here, and you have to ask yourself, well, is it my neck machine work, or is it some old lacquer that's on the body? And sure enough, I had some lacquer on here that I had to remove a little bit of the lacquer in order to allow my neck to truly fit, sides 4, 5, and 6 to truly fit, so it would be really beautiful and finish out. But also making certain that you don't just come in here and scrape all the finish off, because uh, that's the vintage guitar, and you don't want to lose that corner right there. That would be a major mistake. Okay. And you can see where it had chipped off in the past, and it's showing all the old dark mahogany from the sweat and the oils from the player and stuff like that. So to me, that stuff is really cool. You want to keep that intact, and that's probably one of the most important parts of the build, is what is it going to look like once it's finished. But do you have a good fitment? And I've got an excellent fitment. And I had already covered this in video 6, but uh, the original heel would have been about in that location right there. But when the neck was removed at one point in the past, someone drilled up under that. It's not a big deal. I've seen stuff like that. But when I machined this new heel, I machined it to come down about, I think, about another 3/32 of an inch. Because you don't want to get too low, you lose the whole Les Paul design. But the Les Paul design is pretty darn high right there. But I took it down just enough to go a little bit lower, but it's still going to get leveled with the body. I'll cover that stuff in a moment. But I just wanted to show you that when you're working all these when you're fitting all of these sides, especially side 4, 5, and 6, it's kind of mind numbing trying to get all that to work out. So we're true with the center line of the bridge. We are true with the center line of the body, and we are ready to machine the neck per the width here, which will define the trapezoidal path in relation to the nut. So you see how all these variables are just coming together all at once to make certain that you got a guitar that's true. And you might think, well, that's easy because the body's already there and everything's kind of defined for you. And for the most part, it's not difficult, but it's also sometimes you might be used to a certain path that you take when you're building a guitar, joining a neck to the body. But when you're doing a restoration, you're forced to look at what's in front of you, and then you might have to adjust how you do your machine work, building your neck and tenon in order to fit it to the body, so that when you come over here, you're getting really, really close to your finished guitar. You're not there yet, because the next thing to do would be come over here, hold that location, make that pencil mark right there. I may be repeating this, I may have already covered this, but if I'm being redundant, I'm just being redundant, because that's going to define what you need to sand off in this location. But I would not do any of that sand work until I do my radius work, and once I get my heel shaped, and then I'll start. I'm going to be leaving a little bit of a flat. That's kind of the Gibson path for the neck heel. So I'll be leaving this flat up here, and all this will get radiused, for the heel. But then right there at the last, then I'll be able to, and this is before this is fitted to the body. All this has to be done before it's fitted to the body. Then I'll be sanding this little area. I'm not with that. I'll be sanding with something like this right here. I'll be pulling that and then looking at what's going on here. And I'm putting right hand pressure on it. I'm kind of rolling it a little bit. Right now I'm within a 32nd of an inch. No, I've got about yeah, a little bit more than 32nd of an inch to go. But nonetheless, you don't do that until you know that you're truly finished with all that work and you're ready to fit this to the body. Because there's nothing wrong with fitting this to the body, gluing it in, getting it perfectly true, and on the center lines, everything lined up, glued in. But once that is the case, you don't want to be up here scraping away mahogany that you should have already removed. And quite frankly, I usually go beyond the lacquer just about probably about a 64th of an inch, because I can build lacquer up. But if my mahogany's proud of that, that's never going to be a solution. There's always going to be a gap right there, and you don't want that. You want it to finish out flush, because the lacquer does have a mil thickness to it. Not much, but it is there. Okay. So I wasn't planning on talking about that much detail, but you kind of need to be thinking about from the lacquer, finished lacquer back, especially on that side right there. This location, yeah, it's important, but it's this location over here is all based on where is the binding going to be finishing out on the fretboard, and it's basically you just want to make certain that you don't have too much binding here and not enough over here. You want it to be symmetrical visually, but you also want to make certain that you're anticipating everything once that binding goes in, so that you're not sanding too much material off right there. Okay, hold a lot of moving parts, as I say, but I think at this point, check the time, 12 minutes or so. I think it's time to go ahead and remove this routing jig, and then I'll start showing some of the fitment. Yeah, and then I'll talk about actually how. Let me put it on the table, because if I don't put it on the table, I won't remember to talk about it. A little bit of trickery that I've never seen anybody do, but it works really well to do your fitment, especially to an old body that might be distorted, because a lot of the vintage Gretsch guitars that I've restored, they're almost a 3-inch wide body, and sometimes that body's a little bit distorted. And when you're fitting a new neck or heel to that body, you want to fit it where it's visually correct, even though it might be dimensionally off a little bit. And you can use sandpaper to pull that off. So I think it's time to pull this off. But I'll tell you what I will do. I'll talk briefly about how to do the radius work on the neck, because this is not something I'm going to be doing on camera, nor even as I'm finished with the work. I won't want to spend much time with it. But basically, you got two different options here as far as this manufacturer and the Gretsch as well. This is a 7/8 inch radius, and this is a 1-inch radius. So 1958 and before for this company is a rounder, fatter profile, but then it's all shaped by hand. They actually varied quite a bit. Some of them had a V to them. Some of them were just fat and round. Some of them were a little bit more tasteful. It's probably just based on whoever was doing the carving. But all the Stuart McDonald templates that I saw for like authentic true 59 was a little bit more graceful, and it wasn't nearly as fat and baseball like. I used the 1-inch radius. And since I have not machined these two necks for these two Les Pauls here, I've clearly spoken to Chip about what profile he wants, and I'm just talking about neck thicknesses. We're roughly going to be going about 7/8 of an inch thickness at the first fret location and just ever so slightly under 1 inch at the 11th fret location. Now, thickness of the fret, thickness of the neck doesn't have a lot to do with the profile, because you can have that exact same dimension with the 7/8 inch radius, and that neck will feel much bigger, much bigger. Even though the center of thicknesses are identical, it'll feel completely different. So with this guitar, for certain, it's going to be getting the 1 inch initial radius. Then everything will be hand shaped down to a, just a standard profile. I still have not clarified 100% with Jerome about his guitar, but we're not there yet, because these other two guitars that I'm working on are going to be taking precedence over Jerome's guitar. But I mentioned to Jerome last night, hey, just be letting me know what you might want, or if you want a moderately thick profile, or just a moderately thinner profile. In other words, there's still time to make a decision on Jerome's guitar, even though the center thicknesses on these two necks are virtually identical, and they are. The starts out 17 millimeter at the first fret, goes up to 25 millimeter, no, 22 millimeter. Anyway, I shouldn't have brought that up, but these two lowers, I could have used either one on either guitar. And the reason I chose this neck for Chip's guitar and this neck on the left for Jerome's guitar, Chip's guitar is a much darker mahogany. Everything about it is just deeper and darker, whereas Jerome's 73 is a little bit lighter. It's a little bit more tan, brown. So even though these two necks came from the same board, it's amazing, by changing that orientation there, this one ended up being a little bit lighter. And I actually I did the lacquer. I actually saturated them both with lacquer, and this one was a little bit darker. So anyway, there you have it. So now let's talk about. So I talked about profiles enough to let you know that this, you can't just machine the finished guitar profile with one bit, but you can get really close to finish so that you minimize all your finish work there on the end. So, all right, I got that up there. Let's talk about the tenon just a little bit more, because this is really important. I always talk about, build your guitar on paper first, and it'll guarantee that you're able to process through things. So by having this little template on paper, see, that shows the historical heel and all that stuff, the historical turn, shows thicknesses here and all that jazz. But most importantly, it shows a length from this point to that point right there. So as I'm doing my fitment, I'm always trying to work from a point of reference where I don't take too much material off this heel, but I got to take a little bit of material off of it, of side number 7, so that sides 4, 5, and 6 actually bed really well. You don't want to take a 1/4 of an inch off or 1/8 of an inch off, but if it happens, well, it's not the end of the world. But make certain that you're fitting. Probably the most important visual fitment is obviously going to be sides 4, 5, and 6. But from a functional and tonal standpoint, sides 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 are the ones that are really giving you your tone. But with this guitar right here, I'm within 1/32 of an inch of the actual length. I still have 1/32 of an inch. I'm within 1/32 of an inch of all 7 sides clocking. You typically can't get there, but from a visual standpoint, it really is beautiful when you look down in there and you see that it's that real nice fit work. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and do that. The only reason I have no on there, I'll talk about this briefly. Yeah, this is actually extremely important. Let me pause. Okay, this is not the bit I used, but because the bit that I used is a 1/2 inch shank, and it's about 2.5 times taller than that. It's a really large bit sticking up out of the table, but it is basically identical. It is identical to that in size, but obviously because When it's in the router table, it's turning counterclockwise if you look down on it. So if it's turning counterclockwise, it's incredibly important that you don't start down here. You need to start, you really have to start up here. You could start all the way up here and let the bearing ride along your Stuart McDonald template. And then once it starts making contact with the wood, then you'll just start machining that off. But you have to keep in mind, there is an enormous amount of wood still up here. So I'm not going to talk about climb cutting. I do a lot of climb cutting, but I'm literally really holding on to this. I'm working off the left side of the bit, and I'm allowing the bit to just do a climb cut and take off some of that mass. Because if you just come in here, you run the risk of horrific tear out if you're I didn't because I'm going really, really slow. But when you enter in right here, you got to enter in really slow. You wouldn't want to enter in with just a really tall bit all at once. But after I did my climb cutting and I got some of that mass off, then I was comfortable to just come in here. This is on the router table. Now I'm coming in and I'm pushing in this direction right here. And the closer I get to this hill, the closer I get to there being almost no wood there anyway. And it gets really easy once you get down here. But because you're removing so much material on this side, got to be really careful about that. And how I did this side right here, this is where it'll really get you in trouble. Let's see. Yeah, you would be cutting like this, like if you, I shouldn't have brought this up, but if you're on your table and you're pushing in this direction, you're beginning to cut into a massively thick part of the neck right here. This is where you run the risk of if you catch right here, you could literally fracture every bit of that corner and it could split and rip it off. I've seen that happen with Carina, with Limba, because Limba is a really dry lumber, and especially if it's quarter sewn. I've machined Limba before, and it was really beautiful right at the point where there was a little bit of a open annular ring there, and it just went boom, and it just blew off the whole thing. Now it glued back perfectly, and it was beautiful, but we don't want to be doing that with our flamed Honduran mahogany. So I took it over to my oscillating sander, sanded off some of that material, making certain that I didn't get into my template. Then when I came in with my bit, which is really tall, much taller than that, I was able to make one nice, clean, beautiful pass. However, right here at the very end, I stopped about this point. Then I came in. I did climbing cuts. I did climbing cuts on that right there, and that guaranteed that I didn't get any tear out at all. Why? Because that's pretty much the finished guitar right there, based on that template right there. Okay. So it's okay to work it right up to the finish line. Why am I explaining this? Because whatever's going on with this neck profile, I want to see it. I want to see if the grain is going up or it's on a pitch like this, or if it's on a pitch down. I want to start seeing that so that when I prepare to glue the ear on here from this location right here, I can verify that whatever is going on in the lower continues up into that ear. Uh, just really important from a visual standpoint. And I'm not going to say just on the player side, but on both sides. If you can match it, that's awesome. How hard is that? That's extremely difficult, especially when you're taking a board from this location right here, that the grain goes this way, and now all of a sudden you're orienting it on a 17 degree, 16 degree, 15 degree, 14 degree, whatever pitch you're orienting it on, it's going to change a little bit. So sometimes it's very rare to get it perfect, but you can get pretty darn close. Okay, so now let's take this apart and stop talking about machine work. See, that's one strip of masking tape right there. First time I've seen it. Oh, the reason I had that that warning label on there, no, don't touch it. It's because the tenon on this right here is centered, and the tenon on this is offset a little bit. And I did not dare want my router bit. I didn't want to be over there daydreaming, then all of a sudden think, oh, I'll just go ahead and route that too. And then I screwed up my tenon. So as you can see, my warning label assured that I didn't screw anything up. And I will say this, it's kind of disheartening as you start taking the mass of the wood away, you start losing a lot of the tap tone. They still sound beautiful, but the benefit is feather light. They start getting feather light. So, and then obviously over here on your template, I can't risk leaving that on there because in the event there was a little bit of CA glue that might have penetrated through the tape. Right now is the time I need to find it and make certain that I get it cleaned off. So that location right there, that's a locator pin and a locator pin right there. You can drill locator pins. If I wanted to, I could drill locator pins through here when I'm putting the fretboard down, and then those locator pins will assure that the fretboard doesn't move either in any direction. Okay, so let's do a flyby. Really cool. Very nice. Perfectly centered. Everything's nice and true. Nothing wonky going on. Start hearing the Honduran mahogany marry up. That's your target. Now you might think, well, isn't that a little bit loose? Yep, it has to be. You've got to get everything fit. There's no way you could do all this machine fit, this hand fitment, if this was perfectly tight. You're almost forced here at the end to leave just enough room where, I can't believe I don't have a little shim. I will be doing, this one won't be getting much, but it will be getting just a little bit of shim work right here. But I've still got some filler work to do here. Oh, let me just go ahead and explain this, if I can find it. Okay, eventually I'm going to be talking about this paper thin maple veneer. That's 1/64 of an inch. But if you, in a perfect world, sure, this would be absolutely the exact same dimension as everything in there. But in a real world, what you're working with is this flyby right here. Let me see if we can just get in the camera. Okay, I'm showing the tenon fitment. It's a little bit loose right now, and you have to have that to do your fitment, because what you're doing is you're assuring that sides 4, 5, and 6 are visually beautiful. And once you get them visually beautiful, and then with respect to that center line, I'm just going to say the center line, from the center of the bridge to the center of the nut. And let me just try to pick this thing up. Okay, so you see your fitment right here. We'll say we're talking about sides 4, 5, and 6. This side, and that side. And then also you're wanting to look at your tenon. How is it fitting to the body? I have no idea if you can see that. I got a good idea. You probably can. But see from the front, you're looking at that line right there. You're looking at that point right there. And you're just making certain that everything fits. And man, it's hard to hold this thing, especially. It'd be nice if I had a little clamp on it. You realize how heavy a Les Paul is when you try to hold it with one hand like that. Okay, sorry. All right, so it looks great there. It's great on the bottom. No trick photography. Looks great on the base side. And it's pushed all the way up against this left side, clocking really beautifully. And the looseness, any looseness that is in there is on this base side. And I'm going to show you just how minimal the looseness is. That's as deep as it'll go right there. And when you get up here, it will drop down a little bit right there. So what's going on is this, before this gets glued in, I'll be coming in with a piece of maple shim, and I'll shim over that entire side. And now that I know that I'm fitting perfectly up against this and everything is true, now I will glue this down with a tight bind. The entire surface will have a little maple shim, and then there at the last, I literally will come in and start feather sanding off what needs to be taken off. See, it probably will have the full thickness back here, but up in this location up here, it might be it might be near transparent because the tenon is fitting so well. And you might say, well, how do you verify that your tenon is fitting really well? Put it in upside down. Wow, this is hell. See how true you are? So what's going on there? And if it's fitting beautifully 180 degrees opposite, then that lets me know I'm perfectly true on those two surfaces. Oh, sorry about that. I know it just went crazy. Let's see if I can stop it. Okay. So let you know you got a really good job. Very nice job. And then once this, yeah, I should be able to hold it right here really well. See, I'm hitting material right there. And then it's just let's see if it'll bottom out. See, it won't even bottom out right here. I'm going down about the full. So that lets me know that I'm pretty darn close to, you want to know the truth? This could be glued in. It'd be fine. This doesn't even need a shim, but I'm just letting you know that if there's tone in that little member right there, then that lets you know that it will be transferring tone down that neck lower into the body. Okay, so we're splitting hairs here, but it's really, really nice work. And then here on the end, see how that shim is there, is going all the way to the very bottom? That lets you know that you're guaranteeing that you're not bottoming out right here, because if that was binding right there and you had a gap up here and you're thinking, oh man, what's wrong? Well, the tenon's too long and you got to shave off some of the length of that tenon. I would rather the tenon be 1/8 of an inch too short than a 64th of an inch too long. That would be, well, eventually you'd find it. Okay, so yeah, Les Pauls are heavy, and especially when you're trying to hold it with one hand. All right, let me check the time and see what I might want to talk about, because I didn't talk about that sandpaper yet. So let me pause, get the table under control, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how do you get those 7 sides to fit. Okay, since it's not a very long video so far, I'll go ahead and spend a little bit of time and just show you how you can make a little a flexible sanding file. What we're going to be targeting here is you're going to want to have the body clamped, like clamp here and clamp there, so the body doesn't move, and you're going to be, you're going to be starting with this right here first, and it won't even go in there, and you're going to have to determine what material do I start removing. Do I remove it on this side or what, in order to get it to begin to fit. Now, as you can see, I'm working in that direction, but once I get it loose enough that it'll actually start going up in there, then I needed to start making the determination of, is this plane here identical to this plane right here? And since I'm not tapered yet, I'm able to use my square in order to assess, you know, where is it on this side? And am I catching a fingernail? So I would start making the assumption there's a possibility. Well, I wish this one was off, but it's not. It's just about perfect. Typically, because see, these are cut by hand. You're cutting these with your fret saw, and I just pretty much hit this one close on. I think this side's going to have to get a little bit of material taken off of it, but once you finally get it loose enough that you're able to start making the determination, where does material have to be removed from either 4, 5, or 6. Again, you have not tapered yet. You're doing all that work because sometimes, I need to go over to the table saw and take off, a 32nd of an inch, and that's a lot of material. And I want to make certain that I keep that nice and true. Nice. Well, let me just show it. See, that's nice and true. Even though those was rough cut with a table saw, I'm still S4S on my tenon. Okay, well, that's awesome. So I know that if I take a little bit of material off right here, then I want to make certain that I take it off equally on the whole tenon. So once you start getting it to the point where it's like where you're able to like slide it in and kind of push it in a little bit, you're having to kind of maybe force it a little bit, not breaking in half, but you're getting to the point where it's not falling in like that. That's when you're going to take off a little bit more material so that you can truly get it under control and start clocking and ask yourself, well, where am I clocking? Am I loose right here? Am I loose on it? I see I'm using a eraser shield. I can't see it. I don't have my magnifier glasses on. You see I'm touching right here, but let me exaggerate. Let's say I'm loose over here. Well, then I want to take a little bit of material off here, but for the ease of the camera, since the camera's on the right side, let's say that it was a little bit loose on this side right here, but I was touching, it was making real solid contact right there. Well, then I want to be able to pull a little bit of this sandpaper. I want to be able to pull that sandpaper through there, but if I have it on just a piece of sandpaper like that, it might be a little bit sloppy. So what you could do, let me make a mark. And every bit of this is just based on the actual little straight edge that you have because you want it to be slightly flexible. Take a second. You're about to find out why I like having the construction paper down. That's what I'm doing here. I'll just do this. No sense in it being unattractive. Now you got your flexible file here, and This would be stationary. It's not moving. You put this up here, and since that's clamped, you just put just enough pressure up against. See, like if you were loose, but you knew that you were going to shim that at the end, well, then make all of your readings by pulling this over against this left side here. Slide this in, make contact, and then it's kind of hard to do. What you can do, usually what I'm doing, I'm working from the bottom because I'm right-handed, and I'm kind of pulling down. And then once you start really truly fitting it to the body, now this is when you just get down to the actual sandpaper. And can't get that body to hold itself for some reason. You're basically just pulling through, because I don't have the body clamped. I can't control. See, you want to be able to control the tension that you're pushing on this neck as you're pulling that through. And the fact that you got the slick surface on the back, well, you're not introducing any damage into your vintage body, but you're fitting this heel to that body. And sometimes you're pulling across the bottom, sometimes you're pulling over here. Okay, sorry about the chaos, but it's just, if that was really perfectly stationary, I would be able to bed in the bottom, bed as tight as I need to be up against the back. And trust me, let that 120 grit sandpaper do its job. You don't have to press up against that. Just, have it almost real, just a feather kiss, and just ease your way to the finish line. Okay, but again, when you're starting the initial fitment, it works out great to have it folded over that, and then you can use that file and file that a little bit on the back. So don't spend too much time with that right there, because you'll lose your fitment, because the whole idea about making that initial straight perpendicular pencil line was to define this point here and that point there, and then obviously whatever pitch you are, once you made that cut, you should have been really, really close. But since you did it by hand, it's pretty unlikely that you got it right the first time. This took me about 2.5 hours to do this little bit of fitment right here, and it's still not 100%. It's pretty darn close, but it's close enough that any sort of glue would fill it in. And I forgot to verify with Chip whether he wants me to epoxy this neck in, which most people highly frown on that, or if he wants me to glue it in with Titebond. It's really irrelevant, because it's going to be such an exceptional fit there on the end that once it has a little bit of shim work in it, let's see if I can get it to fit in. That way I can actually see. You can do a bit of a flyby. It shouldn't fall out. Yeah, I should have done that on the front end. Sorry, guys. Oh, she's trying to move a little. Better keep my hand on it. And what I can see, that's the actual location of a traditional 59 heel. So this one's about an 1/8 inch lower in order to hide some of those removal remarks from the past. Still looks like a Les Paul though. Oh, and I'll spend a little bit of time talking about this, because I really want to just stay on point talking about the fitment of the neck. But the reason my heel is considerably larger right now, and I may have already covered this, but when this enormous bit comes around here, if you were to go ahead and sand this profile all the way up to the finished heel per the actual Stuart McDonald template, if you did that and then you come in here and try to machine this bit is so big, it's going to literally cut every bit of that material off on the bottom. You're going to lose it. So you're going to have to start out really wide, and that magic number is about 15/16, so that once you do your initial shape work, there's no way around it, but you will have to shape the heel, the final heel, by hand. and all your little rasp tools, using rasp tools and stuff like that. So your initial machine work will be done, and as I've mentioned, making certain that you don't lose that flat. See, every bit of that area right there is remaining flat up there, and then every bit of this over here is getting radiused off, per the profile. But if you want to have that little flat right there on both sides, so that you can then determine how much of that flat you want to remove once you're blending it all in with the actual heel. And you might want the traditional 59 heel, or you might want the thinner heel per the more modern specs. So that this right here is a little bit more modern than the fatter heels, a little bit more vintage. It's just the sky's the limit. They're all beautiful, and by the time you get it shaped, I can't feel any difference. So, okay, check the time. 46 minutes of a lot of information and a table that's out of control. I won't start talking about binding or anything. I looked down, I saw that little piece of binding. I would like to talk about that, but just know that the binding defines the final results of all your dimensions, and according to how wide your binding is will determine how much material you've got to shape off and work with. So look at the table here briefly. I don't think there's anything else to talk about. And I wish I could have done 2 or 3 videos in between this showing you how I worked up to this point. But I think just reading between the lines, this is where I started from at the end of video 4. And this is where I am now and about to do all the initial profile work per what I just said. Left it nice and wide right there so I don't lose any vintage heel after it's all said and done. And then ready to glue the ears on and start putting it together. And then after you get this neck shaped up to roughly that type finish right there, then, and you've defined that those widths and all that stuff right there. See, there's that flat I'm talking about. Left a little bit of flat there on both sides. And once you're at that point, and all this is beautiful and finished, and if you did a lot of overlay and a lot of binding and all that jazz, well, do all that work separate from this, and then finish this neck. Other than I never try to put the fretboard on first and then glue it all in as a component. I definitely go ahead and just glue the lower end, and then I glue the fretboard down. Okay, I'm gonna stop because I'm getting too far ahead of the game. But nonetheless, I say all that to say this: you'd be surprised how quickly this neck, this S4S initial shape is about to turn into a more finished profile. Okay, and what is that right there? That right there, 1 inch. Okay, so I appreciate you guys dropping in, and I will, as I say, just stop talking, and I will see you guys in the next video. And the next video for this guitar is probably going to be about 5 to 6 days out, if not even further, because Eric's SG is about to take precedence because I'm about to do all the pearl work. And I'm so glad I thought of this. The only reason I haven't done the pearl work on Eric's SG is because right now my shop is a chaotic dust bowl of Honduran mahogany dust, and I wanted to get all of this machine work done on these 2 lowers so that once I get both of these lowers looking like this right here, I can clean up my shop and do a wash down and get all the Honduran mahogany dust out of here, because Honduran mahogany dust is carcinogenic. You got to be extremely careful working in this environment. So once I get this rough work done, then I can clean my shop and I can go into custom finish mode where I'm doing pearl work on 3 different guitars. So, and I haven't clarified that to Eric yet, but Eric's been really cool about his job. But as far as the SG goes, I'm about a week behind on the SG, but about to get caught up on it. And these 2 Les Pauls are going to be sitting for about a week. So then we'll get Eric's SG finished up, and there'll be some nice videos. there where I'm doing actual authentic mother of pearl work for a actual custom overlay. I think it's five ply binding, so it's going to be really beautiful. And ebony fretboard. So I appreciate you guys dropping in. And I don't see anything else on the table that needs to be talked about. Going once, going twice. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.